Welcome to One Good Thing Media, your official podcast review channel. We search the vast digital landscape on a daily basis to discover the best shows that podcasters have to offer. Are you ready to discover new favorites to add to your playbook? Stay tuned and listen to host Gerald Spears' latest podcast reviews.
Hello, podcast lovers, and welcome to One Good Thing Media. For those of you who are new to the show, my name is Gerald Spear, and I am the creator and host of our podcast. We have a really fun show today. I start out by covering two podcasts, reviewing them actually, about people who are not only serial cheaters, but they have the knack of living multiple lives at the same time. And of course, both of them have happy endings. That is to say, they were busted and outed on social media. This is why the title of this particular podcast episode is called Cheaters, Liars, and Skanks. And to be honest, this has happened to me. I have been with a skank. And the hose monster that I'm referring to, his name was Alan. I had no idea that he was hitting up every woman he ran across, from where we had our dry cleaning done to the grocery store to my salon at the time. He was just relentless. And I have to tell you that once it came to light, I can happily report that although there was no social media available back then, I kicked him away from me so hard that he landed on the moon. Now, I know finding out about something like this could be really painful. And, you're trying to find every excuse in the world to convince yourself that you couldn't possibly be hooked up with somebody like that. In my case, by the time I caught on to what he was doing, I was so over him that I didn't care. But I know it can be painful, and you have to lick your wounds, and most of all, you have to move on. After all, the most important thing in life is to have somebody by your side that really loves you. We also have an interview today with none other than June Edward. Some of you may know her, some of you may not. Let me explain who she is. June Edward is a psychic and a medium. She has a long history of helping solve crimes and also to connect with departed ones who have left this earth but have not cut their ties with the people still living. She also does something interesting, and this is why she is on the show this week. June Edward believes that everybody is born with psychic abilities, but some of them may be great, some of them may be small, but they're there nonetheless. And one of her missions in life is to show people that this is true about them as well as every other person that was born on this earth, and that they have simply been squelched. They haven't been lost so much as they've just been suppressed. And by bringing your abilities to the forefront or into your conscious mind one more time, you will be able to develop them and help use them to judge other people's characters, whether it's somebody you're dating, somebody you're married to, or even somebody that is supposed to be a friend or a co-worker. And although she doesn't mention this specifically, her advice also helps you deal with toxic relatives. Before we get going, I want to ask you, as I do every week, if you haven't done this already, please follow us. And if it's in your heart, to give us a 5-star review. It helps us more than you can ever dream. And if you also love our show and want to talk about it, please mention us to your friends and relatives. Post us on social media. We are a young podcast, and we want to become well known as soon as possible. Before moving on to my reviews, though, I want to pour just a few drops of tea. I have just one item of news today, and I don't know if you're going to be excited about it or not. How do you feel about Meghan Markle? I know for myself that I feel very conflicted when I think about her. And I've watched interviews like the one with Oprah Winfrey and on the news, and you're always hearing about somebody that's pissed off at her. And so it makes it difficult to call her likable, But nonetheless, I'm on the outside looking in, and you may feel completely different. So, the news I'm going to share today is either going to make you groan or clap with happiness. Meghan Markle is back in the podcast game. As you probably know, Meghan Markle did have a podcast, and it was on Spotify. It was called Archetypes, and she did very few episodes of that particular podcast. There was a lot of problems, as there always are, and the Spotify people were accusing her of not pulling her weight, of having other people write her material, of not producing in a timely manner. There was all kinds of complaints going on, and who knows what the total story was. I don't know, but in true fashion, there was a whirlwind welcome for her and a whirlwind goodbye out the door. Now, a company called Lemonada Media, which has a lot of podcasts featuring strong women, has announced that Meghan Markle is going to be joining their company with a new podcast. This announcement is so fresh that they don't even have a name for her podcast, but they have mentioned that in addition to new material, they may be bringing over Archetypes from Spotify. So, welcome Meghan Markle. I just can't wait to hear what you have to say next. My first review today is a podcast that is called Something Was Wrong. It was launched in 2018, and since that time, the company has produced 19 seasons. This is thanks to Tiffany Reese, who is the CEO and founder of Broken Cycle Media and the host and creator of Something Was Wrong. I've personally listened to every season and every episode of those seasons, starting when the podcast was first launched, and I love them. I love every one of them. I do have my favorites. I like the particular seasons where it deals with a single problem or person, and it really fleshes out the entire story over several episodes. Season 14 is one of my favorites. I know it's a great story, but it also resonates with me because the villain of the story, Jake, begins as a hairdresser in the story, and I am a former hairdresser, and trust me when I say I have worked with plenty of Jakes in my day. Season 14 opens with a woman named Kaylin who had a long-time relationship with Jake. Her descriptions of how Jake treated her, his lack of respect, his absolutely uncaring ways, and psychopathic lying really prove the old adage that actions speak louder than words. It also underscores that when you have a funny feeling, when your gut is telling you something, you need to listen to it. After Kaylin, there are several women that had the courage and still have it to step up to the mic and tell their stories. Not only what he did, but what they allowed him to do and to take him back, because he was such a smooth talker. And once the victims started talking to each other, at least several of them, they decided it was going to be a great idea to open a Facebook page and out Jake. And wouldn't you know, not only did it become highly popular, but several other victims of Jake's also stepped forward and told their stories. Oops, he was busted. I'm not going to give away the ending, but I do have this to say. When women unite for a cause, they have the ability to defeat an entire army. I have another favorite season, and I want to share it with you right now. I talked about Tiffany a little bit in the beginning. She's an activist, as I mentioned. She is an advocate. She gives victims their voices back by allowing them to tell their stories on her podcast. But come to find out, Tiffany also has a story of her own. She had a rather bizarre upbringing, and she tells it all in season 16. So here's what I suggest. Get to know Tiffany a little bit on other seasons. Listen to her talking to people, her empathy, her sympathy, how she molds different stories so that they really bring out the plight of the victim. And once you feel like you've gotten to know her a little bit, then go and listen to season 16. Here is a clip where Tiffany starts to discuss her story.
15 seasons now, I've thought about and been asked about sharing my own story. It's honestly just never felt like the right time for me to go public with all of this until now. So much of my own story I've honestly never looked into. I've never spoken to the witness at my brother's murder or read many a document that are out there. I needed to focus on my kids, my family, my livelihood, and then something was wrong. And keeping it afloat through COVID and the economy crashing and just general worldly chaos. And honestly, I've shared this before, but I'm really afraid of my parents suing me because that's what they fucking love to do. There's a lot of reasons why I've put this off, even though I'm a very extroverted, introvert, ambivert, is that what it's called? I love people and I love human connection. I've been so focused on the show and telling other people's stories, and it just didn't feel like the right time. I also am really afraid of my parents. I also don't want them to have any excuse to contact me. So there's been a lot of fear and shame, a fear of if I share this and I share my father's crimes or the things about my family that I feel shame about, even though it's not my shame to have, what if that makes people think of me this way?
As you can tell by just that one short clip, this is a very profound episode. I suggest that you kick back, be still, and be with Tiffany as she tells her story. My second review today was really hard, and I say that because I was looking for people who had actually outed their oppressors on social media. And of course, if it spills into a podcast, all the better, right? Well, to my surprise, there were so many. Oh my gosh. I finally settled on the Dichotomy Diaries, which was originally on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and now a podcast by the same name. The host of the pages and the podcast is a woman named Amanda Arnier. And Amanda actually hooked up with a man that she calls Dick. And I have to say, she gave him a very apt name because he was, and probably still is, a dick. And just as an interesting aside, although she doesn't disclose his name in the podcast, if you go to her TikTok, for instance, or Instagram, you will see early pictures of Dick and their marriage, a lot of their breakup. She tells a lot of things in real time on those social media pages. The podcast was the last thing to come, and it happened in the fall of 2023. Now, I have to say, I was stunned at the amount of abuse and indifference that Amanda chose to withstand in the name of love and in the name of staying married to this absolute loser who, by the way, was also a gambling addict. When Dick finally left, he left her broke, and he left her heartbroken, and he left her to pick up the pieces and go on, which thank God he did, because she needed to get away from this man. Here is a clip from Season 1, Episode 1, that Amanda has entitled The Sin City Serpent. Now, if cursing bothers you, please forward 90 seconds. Otherwise, kick back and enjoy the show.
Hello, and welcome to the Dichotomy Diaries, an intimate, first-hand view into the dumpster fire that was my life. I'm your host, Amanda Arnier, and today I'm inviting you to join me on a deeply personal journey as we navigate a story that has left me with scars I will forever wear as war medals. Before we dive in, I want to provide some context. The story you're about to hear is being shared chronologically as it unfolded in my life. I want you to understand that when we're in the midst of fucked up situations, our perspective can be clouded. Our judgment can be compromised. This is a true story. This is my story, and I am no angel.
Indeed, it is. But you can learn a lot from Amanda, most particularly what not to do, what not to put up with, and to measure your own self worth much higher than what she did when she was with Dick. Listening to the podcast is like watching a train wreck in slow motion, but at the same time, it is touching. She is so heartfelt, and I promise if you listen to just one episode, you're going to be hooked. Now, you know what time it is? It is time for our interview with June Edward. And to say I'm excited is really an understatement. So, without one more moment of build-up here, let's talk to June. And now on to the interview that I promised you with June Edward. And just to remind you, June Edward is a platform psychic medium. She passed to the other side at the age of 27 and returned to her current life and form by choice. She has worked on missing person cases and consulted with many well-known paranormal groups and authors. She has also created the Relationship Mastery Program, which teaches people how to change their energy, learn their 5 love lessons, repair their relationship, if it's worth saving, and magnetize anyone or anything into their lives. Now, today I'm going to be interviewing June about what she calls relationship traps, how to get out of them, and most importantly, how not to become entrapped by them in the first place. Welcome, June. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Oh, this is going to be such a great interview. You know, I have a question. When we were discussing your background some time ago, you mentioned that prior to this time in your life, in your much younger years, you had experienced a relationship with a serial liar and cheater.
Oh yes,
Would you say that you're really? Okay. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about it and how you learned not to do that anymore?
So you have to remember, first of all, that you planned the life that you have here, and everything happens for a reason. And he was the love of my life at my time, and he was my second real major relationship in life, and fell madly head over heels in love with him. He was very different from anybody that I'd ever met before, very engaging, and we had 3 children together, which, you couldn't have had those with anyone else.
Right.
And it's interesting because you're only supposed to see what you see when you see it. So I'll give you an example. He's a narcissist, and he's a true narcissist, which is a mental illness. People think people are narcissistic because they take care of themselves first. This was not on that level. He is a true narcissist. He was literally leading a double life. He had more clothes at his girlfriend's house than he had in our home, and I didn't even realize they were going out in bags. Had I known he had been cheating on me for almost 3 years, I would not have had my 3rd child. And it was almost as soon as I'd had him, he was only a few weeks old when something just triggered that I think he's cheating on me. So the universe literally puts a veil over you. You're not supposed to see things until you're supposed to see them. If I'd seen it any earlier, I would not have had my 3rd child with him. Yet as soon as my child was born, boom, something clicked. And, I started looking through the phone records because back then it was the old phone in a bag, basically, and it printed out every phone call for the record for the phone bill. And he was a union organizer at the time, and there were nursing homes on there. I'm like, oh, maybe he's organizing a nursing home. And when he came home, I stayed up till almost 2 o'clock in the morning, taking care of the kids, cleaned the house. I waited up for him. And when he walked in the door, I looked at him. I said, "You're cheating on me, aren't you?" And, oh, whoever told you that, they're lying. He was running for political office at the time. They're just trying to cause problems. I'm like, no one told me that. And then he just admitted the whole thing and laid it all out. But leading a completely double life.
Did that actually end your marriage at that point, or
it did not?
Sort of a slow death?
Well, it did not, because again, the universe had a lot of things that it wanted to teach me. And, he went on to tell me how terrible he treated the girlfriend, how he never took her out in public because he was afraid to be seen, and blah, blah, blah. So here I am feeling bad for the girl. And I'm like, well, where'd that bracelet come from that you got for Christmas? You told me the guys gave it to you. He goes, no, that was from her. I'm like, okay. So Sunday morning was political meeting day. And he's on his way to the meeting. And I called her on her phone. And I said, that I'm his wife. And, I know everything about it. And I'm sure he's told you already. And, I just wanted to mail back to you the bracelet you gave him for Christmas because I'm sure it was very expensive. And she's like, what are you talking about? She goes, what are you talking about? He told me you're in a mental hospital. In fact, he comes here every Sunday morning. He'll be here any second. Hang on. And she hands him the phone. Talk about timing.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. So this is after it was supposedly all over. And yeah. So here we go again. So we went to marriage counseling. And this is why I don't believe in couples counseling. Every marriage counselor we went to either told me to get the heck out and run, or accused me of having an affair. So, and if we went to a female, he was accusing her of taking my side. It was just horrendous. So I spent maybe 6 months trying to put it all back together. And he insisted it was over, and he was committed to the relationship and committed to the children. And we went on vacation and blah, blah, blah. And I came back, and he started with me wanting to have a fourth child. And I'm like, oh, no, not this soon. No. And I just had a funny feeling he was still cheating on me. And I'm not sure how I found out that she moved, but I knew that the girlfriend had moved. And I was able to get the new address. So I was my best detective. I hired a babysitter to watch the kids, borrowed the babysitter's car, and I went to take a ride over at lunchtime to see where the girlfriend had moved to. And as I'm pulling up in front of the house, again, everything in life is timing, right?
He didn't.
He comes walking out the front door. A guy from work's pulling up beside me. He walked right in front of my car and didn't even realize it was me until he got into the other car. And the guy's like, that's your wife.
Oh, my.
Yeah, actually, I know how I got the address of where she moved to, because back then they had pagers.
Yes.
And I went to the pager store and got a duplicate of the pager and told them that, he's out of town a lot and I need to get the phone calls if he doesn't get the phone calls. So I got a duplicate of the pager. So when he got paged, I got paged. That's how I got the new address.
So interesting. Well, now this is what I find interesting also, is that at this time in your life, you had not released your psychic abilities. Correct?
No, I was still basically blocking everything, but they still come through. I still, listen to my intuition, which is your psychic ability.
And then one day, many years later, you decide to meditate. What happened?
Right. So I was going through a second divorce and having a lot of trouble in my business and making decisions out of desperation instead of listening to my soul. And I went to a Reiki practitioner to relax, and she recommended that I meditate. And I'm like, there's just no way I can meditate. I've got too much going on in my life. I'm running 5 businesses at the time, going through a divorce, taking care of my mom who's sick. And the first time I tried to meditate, it was like they kicked the door into the other side, and I couldn't shut it off. Wow. And I'm working as a medical esthetician in my own business. And the first client that comes in, I'm like, did your aunt just die? And she's like, yeah, how'd you know that? And I'm like, I have no idea how I know that. I'm like, did you just clean out her house? She goes, yeah, we cleaned it out last weekend. I'm like, oh. I'm like, did you happen to find one of those sock puppets that looks like a monkey that they made in the 50s? She's like, yeah, we found one in the attic. I'm like, oh my God.
I wonder what that meant too.
And it just got crazier and crazier. I mean, by the third person in my room, she was being followed in by her dead husband. She was a widow, and he was in military uniform, standing next to me the whole time. She didn't want to know anything.
That's
It was
crazy.
I just couldn't shut it off. I had to go find people to train me to learn how to shut this off, because I would have gone crazy.
Now, it's interesting. You said that when you were a child, your abilities were kind of squelched. They go, oh, honey, you're just imagining things, that kind of thing that you would normally tell a kid. And so you took it to heart and sort of turned them off, or as best you could. And you mentioned also that we're all born with psychic abilities in varying degrees. And
We are.
perhaps the same thing has happened to most of us.
Well,
That
it's
they are
like playing
there,
a
we're not
piano.
tapping into them.
Yeah, it's like playing a piano. Some people sit down and just play chopsticks. Other people apply themselves a bit and can learn a couple of songs. Other people really want to train themselves and work at it and become concert pianists. And then I'm like your 6-year-old prodigy that just sits down and plays Mozart. But everyone has the ability.
Okay.
It's the difference between, so being in this 3D world, in this body, we all have brains in our heads, right? Our brain is a massive computer, but our brain has a very specific job. Its job is to protect you. How does it do that? It does it by creating fear. So most people make their decisions based on fear. And that's literally a crapshoot. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't work out, but you're always questioning yourself. Everyone has had something happen in their life that they just knew they were supposed to do something. Whether it was they knew they were supposed to drive a different way to work, they knew they weren't supposed to take that trip, they knew they were supposed to marry someone, whatever it was, they just knew. That is your soul. That knowing is your soul.
Okay, so then you explain how important it is to trust your intuition or your gut feelings. Now, is that your intuitive self coming through when that happens?
That's your soul. Yep, that's your
Okay.
soul.
All right. Now, which goes to this. How can we use those intuitive feelings, your soul, to make sure that we don't end up with these assholes, dare I say it on podcast, and then we can avoid these commitments altogether?
You
What do we
always
do?
have to learn how to get in touch with your soul. That's the biggest thing. When you get in touch with your soul, even if you think it's the wrong decision, it's not. Okay?
Okay.
Just like you can say, oh, I should have never married my first husband. That's not true. I listened to my soul. I knew he was the one for me. I knew I was supposed to marry him. And I have 3 wonderful children because of it. And I got quite the experience.
Sounds
So
like it.
everything happens for a reason, but you have to learn the lesson or you just keep repeating it. There's 5 lessons that we came here for our soul to learn to progress. And if you don't learn it, you keep repeating the lesson. So for instance, the universe wants you to think you have choice. Okay. The only choice you really have is to delay those lessons. So it's going to offer you door 1, 2, and 3. You take door 1, you go through it, you get married, you have a couple kids, you get divorced. You're in front of door 1, 2, and 3 again. What do most people do? Creatures of habit. Take door 1 again, get married, have a couple more kids, get divorced again, back in front of door 1, 2, 3. If you learn the lesson that you're supposed to be learning, whether that's self-worth, communication, and trust, whatever lesson you're supposed to be learning, if you learned it that time, you're not taking door 1 anymore. You're going to change and take door 2 and door 3. And so you're not going to end up with somebody like that again. You may still get married and have children, but you're not going to get divorced like we did the first 2 times for that reason, because you learned that lesson.
How important it is. You talk about how important it is to read a person's energy.
It is.
How do you do that? What is it?
So everyone's walked into a wedding or birthday party and felt that high energy and how elated and wonderful it is, right? Everybody knows what it likes to feel and love, how high you are, right?
You're right.
And then everybody's walked into a funeral or heard someone crying and sitting there, and that's low energy. You feel that, right? So that's what you have to start getting in touch with, is feeling that difference in energy. And when you start understanding how energy works, we're all magnets. So you are always either attracting or repelling at any given time. And you're attracting the same people that are on the same energetic frequency as you. It's like a
Okay.
radio station. You can't get the radio station in unless you're on the right frequency, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing. So if you're not happy with the people that you're bringing into your life, you need to raise your vibration. And then you'll start bringing people in that are on that same higher vibration. You know, misery loves company.
Oh. So, what would you say if somebody says, I'm not going to door number 1 anymore? I've taken time to work on myself. I feel positive. What can they do to ensure that they attract the right person, as you mentioned, with energy and so forth, to recognize that energy and to cultivate worthwhile relationships based on that? There has to be some skill that you have to build in order to do that.
Well, it's a process in life, and it takes people sometimes their entire lifetime to get there, right? So this is the reason that I wrote my latest book, All's Fair in Love and Karma, because it lays out those 5 lessons. And I created the 7-week online program, the Relationship Mastery Program, to teach people those 5 lessons.
Yes.
Once you've learned them and you've balanced your energy, not only are you going to bring in exactly what you want in life. It's like you put your order into a menu. I want 6'1", brown hair, blue eyes. I want him to be a lawyer. I want this. The universe will bring it, guaranteed. This is how it works. When you do the work, you get the reward. But you have to learn the 5 lessons as well. Because if you're asking that and they're bringing it and you have no self-worth, they're not going to stay, are they?
No.
If you don't have trust in communication, and they don't know what you want, and you don't trust them, and you don't trust that there's a plan, they're still going to leave.
Yeah. I was just looking at your 4 books that you've written so far. I'm sure you probably have another one in the works. You must, because there's so much dancing in your mind. But the 4 books that you have currently on my list are All's Fair in Love and Karma, Dancing with the Universe, A Night on the Other Side, and the Destiny Card Journal. Is that correct?
No, it's A Night on the Other Side,
Yes.
Dancing with the Universe, the Destiny Card Journal, and All's Fair in Love and Karma.
So can you say that one more time?
Sure. A Night on the Other Side, and that teaches everyone how to develop their psychic ability and their mediumship ability.
Mm-hmm.
Dancing with the Universe is my autobiography. For all those people that say, poor me, you don't know what I've been through, guess what? I've been there. The Destiny Card Journal is helping people astrologically understand when they're born, some traits about themselves, and write their intentions in there.
Okay.
And All's Fair in Love and Karma is my award-winning bestseller, and that is based off of the Relationship Mastery Program. And it outlines the 5 steps to relationship mastery, the reasons that you're here, why you keep repeating.
And if you could recommend one thing for our audience in terms of checking out what you have to offer, where do they start? Because you have so much going on.
Right on my website. They can spend a half a day enjoying themselves, watching the videos. There's links to all the books. There is a free webinar they can take. There's students' videos they can listen to. There's all kinds of fun things on there.
Okay, well, we'll put that in the show notes. I know you included links for me to put in our show notes, but I'll put that on top for them. Well, I want to thank you for being here. I have a lot to think about just based on the information that you've given me during this conversation. Choices, but yet not. It's a matter of when, not if. And what we have to learn and how we can enrich ourselves in this life. It's just very interesting. I'm in the process, by the way, of reading your All's Fair in Love and Karma. It's a
fun book.
It is, and it goes really fast, and I have to slow myself down because I kind of want to digest it as I go. But it's a very easy read, and I will have a link for that if you would like, where they can go to purchase.
And I think everyone will recognize their own relationships in there and things that they've gone through, why they've gone through it, and things they may not have realized that that's why they were there.
Yeah. And then I think, also you're talking about shifting your energy that you mentioned in your master classes and so forth. When you do wind up with someone that is truly worthy of what you're looking for and will enhance your life, you have to make sure that your energy shifts with it, or you can sour things. And I thought that was so interesting too. I have to learn energy shifting.
It's a wonderful thing. We're all energetic beings. That's what we are. Everything in the universe is energy.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I hope to have you on again soon. I have so many genres coming up that you definitely would enhance with additional information and enlightening comments. So hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you. June Edward, ladies. I will have all of her contact information in my show notes. That wraps up episode 11. Episode 12 is also going to be a great podcast. I'm going to be interviewing Richard Bailey. And Richard Bailey actually goes into corporations and gets them back to a healthy position if they're floundering and are really on the brink of going out of business. My interview is going to be about one company that Richard went in to save and discovered corporate fraud totaling millions and millions of dollars, and he ends up working as a mole for the FBI. So that is next week. Until then, you all be safe, be happy, and I'll see you soon. Season 2 of One Good Thing Media has been brought to you by host and creator Gerald Spear. All things technical were fine-tuned by sound engineer David Dodd, and our announcer for all of our shows is Robert Spear. Our theme song for all of Season 2 of One Good Thing Media is Force by AGST.